thank you for joining us today for another exclusive interview sponsored by Immovate. Help your horses reach their maximum potential with Immovate's line of natural homeopathic products. I'm your host today, Aurelian Tremere. Today we're joined by Aaron Wellman, founder and president of Eclipse Thoroughbred Partners, whose rising star journalism heads into the Preakness Stakes as the favorite following a strong runner-up finish in the Kentucky Derby. We'll dive into the last-minute decision to enter the Preakness, how the colt's pedigree and post-draw influence strategy, and what a wet track might mean on a race day. We'll also explore the story behind journalism high-profile ownership group, Wellman's longtime partnership with trainer Michael McCarthy, and what lies ahead should their Triple Crown journey continue. Don't miss this conversation with one of the sport's most accomplished and insightful racing. Well, great to have you here, Aaron.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So after journalism close second place finish in the Kentucky Derby, what adjustments has your team made to prepare him for the Preakness Stakes?
Well, the week after the Derby was really just about honing in on his appetite, his energy level, his condition, his mindset. So we had always thought, even though he didn't win the Kentucky Derby and it's become a little bit more unconventional for horses that don't win the Kentucky Derby to run back in the Preakness. We always had the Preakness in the back of our minds that if he cooperated and showed us the right signs, that we would go to Pimlico. So really, we just wanted to bide our time and make sure that we were being responsible to the horse first and foremost, and give ourselves as many days as possible prior to needing to enter him on Monday in the Preakness so that we could assess him and evaluate him properly. Michael McCarthy took a few days to go back to California after the Kentucky Derby, and when he came back, he was very pleased with what he saw from journalism. He knows him better than anybody. His groom, Rodolfo, and his exercise rider, Mark, have been ecstatic with him in the stall, out of the stall, on the racetrack. So all of those variables came into play. And then, of course, once the horse was giving us all the right impressions, it was important for us to huddle up with our ownership group, which, of course, consists of Eclipse Thoroughbred Partners, Bridlewood Farm, Don Alberto Corporation, and Bob LaPenta, in addition to the Coolmore contingent, Ashford Stud and Coolmore Stud, who bought his breeding rights prior to the Santa Anita Derby. So first concern was the horse. And then once the horse told us he was ready to go, we had to huddle up and make sure that we were doing right by the partnership on the whole, because he's a very valuable asset.
Excellent. And trainer Michael McCarthy, as you mentioned, he mentioned before that journalism is tactical enough with some early speed if need be. How do you feel about drawing post position two, and what race strategy are you expecting?
Yeah, journalism's a horse that does possess quite a bit of tactical speed. Touch wood, he's very good from the gate. He's a powerful breaker. In a few of his earlier races in his career, we probably could have made the lead in the Los Alamitos Futurity, maybe even the San Felipe, because he broke so sharp. But we really wanted to teach him how to have a style in that he could rate, take dirt, and finish, because stamina has never been a question for him. He's got a good kick, a good 3/8 of a mile plus kick. So we always wanted to make sure that he was able to be versatile. But in the classics, regardless of a mile and 3/16 or a mile and a quarter, you want to be in good position early on. So Umberto Rispoli, who knows this horse like the back of his hand, I think he's going to leave there with purpose from the gate, try to establish good early position. It doesn't mean that he needs to be on or even near the lead, but we want to make sure that we force the other speed to utilize some energy going into the first turn, maybe take a little of the starch out of them. And then it allows for Umberto to get journalism into a nice cruising rhythm. He's a big, long striding colt that likes to extend his stride. So hopefully going into the first turn, it's a little bit neater and cleaner of a trip than it was in the Kentucky Derby. He's able to save some ground going into the first turn and then gradually get him into his rhythm up the backside, hopefully in the clear. And then look, it's a very good field of colts. Some of them are fresh, some of them are on the rise. They're not going to be easy to run down, but our mission is to have a target turning for home, engage, and hopefully overpower them when it matters most.
Excellent. And with rain in the forecast for Preakness Day, how confident are you in journalism ability to perform, on a potentially wet track?
He handled it very well in the Kentucky Derby. We're hopeful that it's going to be a normal track
Mm.
on Saturday in the Preakness. He's clearly exhibited brilliance on drier, more normal conditions in California prior to the Kentucky Derby. Um, Umberto Rispoli said that he took the slop in his face very well in the Kentucky Derby. He made a big, bold, sustained move from the half-mile pole all the way to the wire and just got bested by Sovereignty on the day. So the condition is not all that much of a concern. It's a variable that he's dealt with now, whereas it was a bit of a surprise to him and a new condition that he had never seen before prior to the Kentucky Derby. So hopefully he'll be better equipped to handle those conditions. But our hope is that he's going to be able to showcase his talents on a normal racetrack on Saturday and hopefully prove superior against a very good group of colts.
For sure. Eclipse Thoroughbred Partners has assembled over the years quite an impressive ownership group for journalism. Can you talk a bit more about this partnership, how it came together?
Sure. Well, for starters, Eclipse Thoroughbred Partners, our company, our stable, is a syndicate of sorts. It's a racing partnership. So we, as a company, we go out and we purchase horses in principle, and then we form partnerships underneath the Eclipse umbrella, whereby partners come from all over the country and the states and all over the world to participate as fractional owners of Eclipse Thoroughbred Partners runners. And then we have strategic alignments as well. One of the most predominant strategic alignments and partners that we have is Bridlewood Farm, owned by John and Leslie Malone, run by their CEO, George Isaacs. We've been partners with them for many years, going back to 2017 when we won the Belmont Stakes with Taprit. And Bob LaPenta was part of that partnership as well. So when we bought journalism as a yearling at Fasig-Tipton Saratoga, we put the band back together of the Taprit days with Eclipse, Bridlewood, and Bob LaPenta. So it's been great. And then Don Alberto, who is one of the most prominent breeders and owners in the sport, who bred journalism that we we brought the colt from at Saratoga. They elected to stay in for a piece of him as well. So we're the original four owners. It's definitely a group of very powerful players in the game, and we at Eclipse feel very fortunate and honored to be associated with such esteemed individuals and organizations. And then, of course, to have Coolmore think highly enough of journalism to acquire his stallion rights prior to this year's Santa Anita Derby. And thankfully, he got the grade one in the Santa Anita Derby and followed it up with a gallant second in the Kentucky Derby. And hopefully, will touch wood, add a classic to his resume as well. It's the ultimate honor. It's the ultimate endorsement to have an operation like Coolmore having your back and having the faith in our program, our ability to manage journalism's racing career, and then of course for him to be held in high enough regard to grace the Coolmore Stallion Shed when the time comes.
For sure, that's amazing. What initially attracted you to journalism as a prospect? And I guess at what point did you realize you might have a triple crown contender?
Well, look, hindsight's always 2020. We're going to be wrong way more than we're going to be right when we acquire these horses. Thankfully, the ones that we're right about make up for most of the ones that we're wrong about because you're going to fail more than you're going to succeed in this business. But journalism was a colt that we bought as a yearling at Fasig-Tipton, Saratoga. He was a very well-made, sturdy, balanced, good moving individual, had good size, but was light on his feet. He had a great mind even as a yearling, and you see it all the way through his development as a racehorse. Part of what makes him so special is that he's got the mental constitution to go along with his physical attributes. He's by Curlin, who has been very good to Eclipse over the years. We had a champion by Curlin named Nest, a filly, three-time Grade 1 winner, Carolina, three-time Grade 1 winner, Point of Honor, Grade 1 performer. So Curlin's been very good to us, and he's a very strong classic influence. So when you go to Saratoga and you want to buy colts that have classic credentials or potential, he's a stallion that you certainly would never shy away from. And then, of course, on the maternal side of the pedigree, you've got an Uncle Mo mare named Mopetism, who was very accomplished on the racetrack in her own right. And there's a lot of solid quality pedigree on the bottom side. So he really, as we say in this industry, checked all the boxes. But thankfully, as good as he looked on paper and as good as he looked as a yearling, as a baby, he translated that as we sent him down to Bridlewood Farm in Ocala to get broken and trained by Maida Murphy, the head trainer there. And from day one, from the time we put a saddle on his back, he was always indicating to us that he was a really quality racehorse in the making. And as soon as we got him to Michael McCarthy after he graduated from Bridlewood Farm, he was the same. In fact, you would expect for him to be more of a later developing sort, and he was ready even earlier than we thought he would be, which is always evidence that maybe you've got something special on your hands. So credit to Michael and Maida for his early development and training, and Michael, of course, and his team have done an exceptional job ever since in developing him methodically to get to the point where he is today and really maximize the potential.
And as you mentioned, journalism is a son of curling. How much does his pedigree factor, into your expectation for the Preakness distance and condition?
Well, we're really hoping that history repeats itself on Saturday. Curlin was third in the Kentucky Derby and came back 2 weeks later and beat Street Sense in the Preakness. It was a knockdown, drag out battle between him and Street Sense. In fact, Street Sense took the lead and passed Curlin pretty handily inside the eighth pole, and Curlin came back on Street Sense and beat him in the Preakness. And then Curlin came back in the Belmont and got beat just a bob by the filly Rags to Riches. So Curlin himself ran in all three classics and then went on the second half of the year to run the table and ultimately won the Breeders' Cup Classic and was named Horse of the Year as a 3-year-old. Now, those are extremely lofty expectations. We don't, want to try to have journalism fill his father's shoes. However, maybe he is, the heir apparent. Maybe he is a chip off the old block of his sire Curlin, and he's come out of the Kentucky Derby thriving, according to Michael McCarthy. His weight is good, his eye is bright, his appetite is strong, his energy is very, very enthusiastic in his training. So we're hoping that he's a horse that really excels with the work, with the racing, like his father did. I mean, Curlin was a brilliant horse, but he was very sturdy. He was very hardy as a racehorse. And, we're hoping that heart and that constitution shines through with his son journalism.
Excellent. How has journalism recovered since the Derby, and what was the decision process like to commit him to the Preakness, less than 24 hours before the draw?
He's done really, really well. We've kept a very close eye on him. Gave him a few easy days of just walking around the barn right after the Derby. Gave him 2 jog days, and after the first or second jog day, he was ready to do more, which was a great sign. His appetite has been strong all along. His attitude's been good. He's been very, very energetic in all of his activity. And as soon as we picked up his workload to the Gallop on Thursday morning and started to ask a little bit more of him, he was extremely responsive and wanting and willing to do more. So those were all really positive signs that he had emerged from the Kentucky Derby in good order. And important, it was the absolute most critical factor in keeping the Preakness under consideration. So we wanted to give him, the horse, every opportunity to tell us what he was ready and willing to do. We had until Monday and to enter him in the Preakness, but by Sunday afternoon, Michael McCarthy had spent some time with him, went over him with a fine-tooth comb at the barn on Sunday evening, and we were ready to just say, okay, we're going to enter up on Monday. Um, and hopefully it's the right decision. He's certainly instilling confidence in us that it will be.
Beautiful. And talking a bit more about long-term plans for journalism, especially this year and later on, what are those plans?
Honestly, our big time goal this year was the Kentucky Derby, the first half of the season, and the classics. So right now we're just focused on the task at hand, which is to do everything in our power to make journalism a classic winner. We're not looking any further beyond the Preakness on Saturday. It's an honor to be represented by such a magnificent individual in journalism and our ownership group and Michael McCarthy and his team. So we're not taking anything for granted. We're not looking any further ahead than Saturday. We just want to make sure that we get him there as best as we can and that he performs to the best of his ability. And after that, we will know that we had done our job. And then again, it will be a matter of evaluating and assessing him, his condition, and trying to do what's best for him moving forward into the future. But there's no question that he's an elite individual that, all the big races working backwards from the Breeders' Cup Classic, we hope that he will cooperate and allow us to consider. But right now, we're only focused on the Preakness at Pimlico on Saturday.
Could you tell us a little bit more about your relationship with Michael McCarthy?
Michael and I have known each other probably the better part of 3 decades, going back to my teenage years, probably his early 20s. Both predominantly grew up in Southern California around the racetrack. Michael grew up in Arcadia, which is the backyard of Santa Anita Racetrack, and I grew up in Southern California on the west side, but spent every weekend of my life that I can remember at Santa Anita or Hollywood Park or in the summertime Del Mar. And Michael and I knew each other from being track rats as youngsters and going down to the paddock and checking horses out to see how they looked, trying to find a horse to bet, and then ultimately found ourselves on the backside, working with the horses themselves. I worked from a very young age on the backside with intimate hands-on experience with the horses themselves, and Michael did as well. I ended up going to law school and pursuing a profession and a legal career for several years while working at the racing partnership business informally as a side job. Michael, of course, went to work as an assistant trainer for Janine Sahadi and Ben Cecil, and then ultimately for Todd Pletcher in Kentucky and in New York. So he got the ultimate education as a trainer. And our paths crossed because when I left my law practice to become the vice president of Team Valor had horses with Todd Pletcher, and Michael was the assistant trainer for Todd at the time. And so our personal relationship morphed into a professional relationship whereby I was helping manage the Team Valor horses that were being trained by Todd and Michael. And we established a professional relationship. And then when Eclipse was born after I left Team Valor, after Animal Kingdom won the Kentucky Derby in 2011, we bought a filly from Todd out of his barn named Sweet Cat, who Michael was an integral part of her development and helped facilitate the deal with Todd as well. And then our professional relationship got even stronger. And over the course of the next couple of years, as Michael was honing in on branching out on his own, and Eclipse was trying to grow our business, it was clear that Michael was going to move back home to his family in Southern California and hang up his own shingle, which he did. And I'm proud to say that Eclipse was the first operation to give Michael horses to train. And it's been a magnificent run for the better part of the last decade plus. We've had numerous Grade 1 winners, um, incredible wins, great strike rate of success. Michael's just a phenomenal horseman. But like I always say, he's a Grade 1 trainer, but a first-class human being. And our families have become very close. His wife, Erin, my wife, Talia, are very close. Our children, his daughter, Stella, my daughter, Sadie, and my son, Jack, are extremely close. So we've gotten very, very familial oriented over the last several years. And to be on this journey with journalism, the McCarthy family, Eclipse, the Wellmans, and everybody associated with the horse has just been really, really meaningful and special. And I'm hoping that for Michael and the horse, that they get their just due on Saturday with a classic win to top it all off.
For sure. Wow. That looks really like a beautiful relationship, to be fair. Amazing.
Yeah, it's special, and it really speaks to there's so much that can be gained from this industry. The horses, of course, have to be at the core of everything that you love and do. But there's just such amazing people as well. And to be connected to and associated with great people makes this business and this industry just that much more awesome.
And finally, on to the last question, Aaron. What does journalism success mean to Eclipse Thoroughbreds?
Sure. Look, there's nothing quite like the Kentucky Derby and the classics here in America. It really transcends our sport beyond just local media and industry-wide media. It extends beyond that to national media here in the States. And of course, you're interviewing me from an international organization as well. So the interest in classic horses is unmatched. And to have such a prominent, esteemed individual like journalism representing Eclipse Thoroughbred Partners and our partners and taking our partners on this ride is magical. It's so important to prove that we can compete at this level. We've won classics. We've won the Belmont Stakes. We've won 2 Black-Eyed Susans. We've won on Australian Oaks. We've won a race at Royal Ascot. So we've got international success, but nothing compares to the Kentucky Derby and the classics here in America. So we're really not a stable that focuses predominantly on colts. We really are primarily a Philly-based operation, but we do dabble with the colts on a lower scale. And to, from a small sample, have an individual like journalism carrying our colors is just phenomenal. But even more so for our partners to have this experience and really know what it's like. And we came oh so close to winning the Kentucky Derby with the favorite. And if all goes well, journalism will be the favorite in the Preakness in a few days' time. And I just want so badly for the horse and Michael and our partners for him to get that trophy on his mantelpiece.
For sure. This would be amazing. Well, thanks so much, Aaron. That was great.
Pleasure. Thanks
Wonderful
for thinking
interview.
of us, and
Very enjoyable.
hopefully we'll be looking back on this as a very fortuitous interview in a few days.
Definitely. Hopefully. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Likewise. Sounds good.
Hopefully
Take
we'll
care.
be in touch at some point again.
I hope so too. Take care.